2 people? That's some.
Hello and welcome to another live stream from the awesome Andrew Simms BYD showroom here in Broadway and Newmarket. Now, last time we were here, it was a little more in construction. It's finished, so I'm just going to show you. I just did a really quick walk around. So for those of you that haven't been here, let's just have a really quick look at this great showroom. Right, so isn't that a great space? So firstly, before we get started, we'll just go through a little bit of housekeeping while a few more people come in the room. So we have a few prepared questions tonight that have come in from people on social and email, which we'll answer first. And then we will get into your live questions. So please do pop them in the chat. You can do that on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Just be aware that while on YouTube and Facebook, you can see if I reply. On LinkedIn, you can't, but I can still see your questions. So ask them, or if you're that worried about it, go over to YouTube or Facebook. If for some reason the stream goes down, please do stay online. It will come back up. The software like that's pretty great. It's probably just we had a glitch with the internet and it'll pop back up. We will hopefully be here, I think, for about 40 minutes tonight. We'll see how we go. Now, I do understand that this stream was shared in a few Aussie Facebook groups, which is great. We welcome our Australian cousins to the thing. But just be aware that some of the advice tonight is specific to New Zealand's electricity system, New Zealand's market. It may be a little bit different, so I do recommend that you speak to either your BYD agent, EV Direct, or your charging supplier if you're working specifically with charging. So now, our panel tonight, starting we've changed order a little bit, guys, but we'll go from this side. We have Matthew Wales from BYD Auckland here in Newmarket. Thanks for joining us, Matthew. And thanks for supporting this great stream. Just past the middle there, we have Glenn Inkster from TransNet, who's our EV charger expert. And on the far side, we have Ben Pengelly of Pengelly Bennett, who can answer all those electrician questions, all those tech questions that are out there. So thanks everyone for joining us. Warren Willmot from BYD Auto New Zealand is hoping to join us tonight. Auckland traffic pending, and he hopefully will give us answer a few little questions, maybe give us a tiny delivery update if that's possible. We're not entirely sure, but we would like to keep this, at least at the start, specifically about charging. So if you do ask any questions about the broader BYD brand or vehicles or anything like that, I will get to them, but we will be focusing on charging first, so maybe hold those until I say a little later. So now, if we get on to the charging discussion, I'd like to start with a bit of a quick fire round on some of these things for our experts, just so we have a bit of an understanding when we tackle some of the tougher questions. There's a few terms and so forth that I think it is helpful for people to understand. So we haven't got buzzers, but but Glenn and Ben, I guess these are for you, though. You're welcome to jump in, Matthew.
I'm okay for them to answer.
So let's start. What is an Evse?
It's you, mate. Electric vehicle supply equipment. So I guess it's everything from your charging stations, mode 2, mode 3 charge cables that would connect an untethered charging station to the car, but it's a pretty broad term, electric vehicle supply equipment.
More often than not, I think we see that term applied to the lead that comes with the car, the so-called granny cable. I love that term. I'm not entirely sure where it comes from, but is that's not correct though?
Part of the thing that makes understanding EV charging quite difficult is many different terms for the same thing. You call it a trickle charger, slow charger, portable charger. Fundamentally, it's the ICCPD is the technical term for it. You can plug it into a wall, a normal domestic socket, and charge your car. Many brands call it the emergency charger. In a lot of cases with a full EV, consider it like a space saver spare tyre, where it's there in case you need it, but ultimately most charging really should be done using a fixed wired mode 3 charging station.
Mm-hmm. Right, so that's that one covered. Now, what is a kilowatt?
Right, so a kilowatt is just a measurement of power. So 1,000 watts is 1 kilowatt. So similar to your light bulb is 100 watts. Your charger for your phone or your devices can be 21 watts. A watt is a measurement of power.
Mm-hmm. Now, we use kilowatt a couple of different ways in the EV space. So you've got kind of kilowatt hour for battery storage, kilowatt for charging. Can you just explain the differences there?
And if we remember that kilowatts is a measurement of power, so it's how you get the power, I guess. A mechanical car, like a petrol car, still has a power rating. Kilowatt hours is a measurement of energy. So if you translate what it means in the petrol world, it's like how many litres of petrol you have in your car. So the battery size is always going to be stated in kilowatt hours because that's how much energy you have. And the kilowatts, effectively your car's going to have an output of kilowatts just like a petrol car would have. But of course, when we're talking electrically, the kilowatts of the charging is how fast or slow the charging is going to be. So you're charging an electric vehicle with kilowatts of electrical power and storing it as kilowatt hours of electrical energy.
Right. Okay. Cool. Next question. I guess it's in a similar vein. What's the difference between a volt and an amp? Because I'm sure those terms are going to come up later tonight.
I guess the easiest way to explain that would be your typical garden hose at home. So your volts are your flow or pressure of water, and your amps are the volume of water and how much is coming out of that hose. So that's a nice simple way to explain that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, there have been a few questions which discuss, and we'll come to them later, discuss, I heard my car could do 7 kilowatts, but I can't do 22, all this kind of stuff. I think this really comes down to, what's the difference between AC and DC charging?
Well, if we look at it this way, power in our homes is AC power, but a battery is direct current. So in order to charge a battery, you've got to convert the AC power at home into DC power to charge the battery. So the AC charging versus DC charging is fundamentally, I guess, describing what the power is you're putting to the car. When you're doing an AC charge, we all tend to call it a charger on the wall or the portable charger, but it's much easier to understand its role as effectively a controlled fancy safety switch, which is sending a signal to the car, and the car is manipulating that signal, telling the charging station to turn on or off. So when we talk AC or DC charging, it's fundamentally the power that's going to the car. If you do a DC charge, you're bypassing the car's onboard battery charger and providing it with a much faster charge rate with more kilowatts, but much bigger than what the car's onboard charger could ever do. So the actual battery charger is a DC charger when you're doing a DC charge, but when you're doing AC charging, it's effectively that controlled fancy safety switch.
And those DC chargers can supply that DC current because they've got a far bigger area for equipment and so forth, and heat sinks and so forth to convert that AC to DC. It's just taking that equipment out of the car, really, isn't it?
Of course, yeah. So, when you're charging a battery with the onboard charger, it's clearly much smaller because you're taking that with you. It's driving with you, so less weight, for example.
What is CCS?
CCS is just a term for combined charging system. So that's when you're talking CCS, it is the DC charging connector that's going to the car. In the case of the BYD, it uses a CCS connector, which is becoming, you could say, more popular than the alternate, which is the Shardamo.
Similar vein, what is Type 2?
Okay, so Type 1, Type 2, it's clear, I guess you could say Type 1 come along first, but Really, just like we have left-hand drive and right-hand drive cars, there's two fundamentally different types of connector that we use here in New Zealand. Type 1 is for a used import that comes from Japan, but for anything new, we've kind of standardised on the Type 2 connector. So it's just physically the different type of connector that plugs into the car for the AC charging.
Mm-hmm. Who's done that standardisation? That was a government advice, isn't it, to standardise on a Type 2, is that right?
I guess we're following the European way, really. So it's not quite correct to say that Type 1 is the old and it's been taken over by Type 2, because Korea, America, Japan, they all use that Type 1 connector. And there's some reasons that Type 1 actually is better. But we have standardised on Type 2. It enables three-phase charging for where it's appropriate, but it doesn't necessarily mean that three-phase charging should be done. But obviously the Type 1 connector has less pins in it, so you cannot do a three-phase charge.
Okay. This is not a question about restaurants, but what is a Byo cable?
Okay, so I guess... So BYO, so when you're doing AC charging with what they call a Mode 3 charging station, it's either tethered, where the lead's fixed, permanently wired to it, or you bring your own cable. So I guess in instances where the charging point operator or the person who's providing that charging station, where they don't want to have the maintenance of having the lead, you can plug in. So one end goes into the charging station, the other end plugs into the car. That's what your BYO cable is. You'll note that any DC charging, it's always tethered, so you don't actually have to take a cable to do a DC charge.
Now, this question is specifically for Ben, so I think he's feeling a bit left out during the middle section. If I jump on social media, or particularly TikTok, why is it that all the other tradies are giving electricians a hard time?
Probably that derives from the builders, I guess, because some Sparkies, not us maybe, but yeah, can be quite messy. So I guess that's derived from the builders, giving us a bit of grief.
Now, just before we go on to the next section, and just so we can prove that we are at a BYD dealership and there are cars in the country, I am just going to chuck up on the stream here a little bit of a shot from my very potato camera to the side, and you can see there that we do have cars here. Sorry to our Australian viewers, we've got plenty of them floating around. If you get the chance, do come down to the Newmarket dealership or your local BYD dealership if you're outside of Auckland, and check those out. Are there any slots for test drives these days, Matthew, or is it still pretty tight?
Absolutely. So during the week, availability is pretty reasonable. The weekends obviously are our busier times, but if you go to our website, bydauckland.co.nz, you've got live test drive booking straight into our system. Once you book your test drive, you can actually log in and change your date if it turns out to not be suitable. So if you keep a really close eye on that, we do have weekend spots. For this weekend, it will probably be people will move around or cancel or change to another day, and some spots might pop up. So it's well worth keeping an eye on that if you're looking to get a test drive on the weekend. But during the week, there's reasonable availability if you want to jump on the website and have a look.
Fantastic. Right, so now let's move on to the next order of business. We've got a little bit of positive news, I think, that just shows some really good reactivity from Andrew Simms, and I think the broader BYD operation. Now, we did have some comments on social media and on email in regards to the price of the charger option that was being offered by BYD in partnership with Glenn's company TransNet on a wallbox charger. Now, that was at a higher price. It was at $3,995. And I understand that's now been repriced to $2,995. But there is a difference in what you're getting, I gather. Can you just explain that a little bit more, Matthew and maybe Glenn?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start, and then Glenn can probably give you a little bit more technical information. So what we were originally looking at when we first put the fixed price charger install to market was really the gold standard of charging. So we had a load shedding module, we had a very wide area that we covered, we had the charger being able to be further away from the switchboard and covered a couple more parameters, but what we're finding is that we probably overstated some of those requirements a little bit, and that we're finding not all consumers need that. So we've trimmed some of that back, and we've also taken the load shedding out, which I'll probably Glenn explain a little bit further. And by doing that, we've got the price back to $2,995. We saw plenty of feedback from you all on social media, so the three of us all sat down late last week and again early this week and crunched numbers as tight as we could. to get what we think still a pretty gold standard charging solution. But Glenn can probably talk through the load shedding, which is available as an optional extra at $495 for those that think that they need it.
Yeah, so power sharing, I guess load sharing. So integrating an EV charger or charging station into a home, we need to remember that every vehicle, including the BYD, can pull effectively more than half the allocated current that the home is wired for. Just like a car though, we don't expect a car to have a power rating and then you use all that power the whole time. The house is the same. So if we consider you go to a subdivision, a home might be allocated effectively 2.5 kilowatts of power. So how we integrate with a home is quite important. So control of charging is very important. So what the sensor does in the switchboard, it effectively monitors the total power that the house and charging is using. And you can have a set point, and when you reach that set point, it'll just throttle the car back automatically. So for those that are right into EVs and setting the charging up and having a charging station that you can reduce the current, if you set it all up correctly, do your charge schedules, and nothing happens out of the ordinary, then you could say you don't need it. It's still highly recommended to have it as a backstop there, so you know you can never overload your home due to EV charging. And in a real world scenario, you might have it set up perfectly, and then have teenagers that come home on a Thursday late at night and turn the oven on. So we do need to remember that if you're charging at full speed, what the BYD and most others can take, and you put an oven on and you have some heat pumps going, you simply don't have enough power. So you still definitely do have that option of having the power sharing in there, but of course for the package deal that's been taken out just to make the pricing a little bit more competitive.
And when Ben's team come to your home, if you get it going for the charger install, they'll be able to talk through that a little bit more and probably give you some advice on other appliances you have in your home and whether that load shedding module is going to be of value to you. So it's something you can add on at any point, but again, you can, as Glenn probably mentioned, control the speed of the charger. That is one of the beauties of the charging solution we have, is that you can actually log into the app and you can throttle the charger back to whatever you think is acceptable for the rest of the load you have in your house.
And it just, of course you can, and it's really highly recommended, even if you're not installing in that sensor, pre-wire for it, because it might be in the future that you add a second EV and want to have a second EV charging station so they can all talk together and still monitor the home. And of course the same sensor actually enables you to charge in a mode called EcoSmart. Now say it's the weekend and there's plenty, you've got a solar installation, there's plenty of sun, you're making heaps of power but you can't use it all for your home. What that sensor does is it'll enable the car to be, that the rate of charge is controlled specific to the amount of spare renewable energy that you have. So even if you don't want to install it in the beginning, it's certainly worth pre-wiring for it so you can add it at a later date.
Now, Ben, the installation is a big component of this. It's more than just a Sparky coming in and throwing a cable from your switchboard to the charger, to the. I'm trying to avoid saying charger to the. Let's say wall box.
Charge point.
Yeah,
Charge point. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors involved. Location of your switchboard. A lot of switchboards are in the garages. Some of them are in your hallways. Things like that. We've obviously got multi-level homes to think about. Switchboard could be in the middle level, and we're trying to get to a charger on the ground floor. So there's definitely a lot of factors in the location of the switchboard, and obviously how we get that cable there. Single-story homes, we may be able to go up through the ceiling space. And back down an external wall, or obviously there may be surface cabling required. So yeah, a lot of factors to think about, and obviously we get through that when we're on site. So.
Should people think twice if their local Sparky, they call it local Sparky, comes up to fit a charger that they've maybe acquired wherever, and he literally just comes in and starts the wiring rather than actually talking to them about what their usage is and a bit of a look at the system?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, we've got this power issue, with not overloading the home, so that's a key factor. But obviously, most importantly would be the SDoc, which is a supplier declaration of conformity that every bit of equipment installed in New Zealand has to have. It's gone through rigorous testing and things like that, and they issue these SDocs. So we definitely check for that every time the product we're installing has an SDoc. Yeah.
Great. So that's a bit of a move. Now, obviously, if you've already ordered that charger, they'll be talking to you about what level of package you want to go to now, or
Absolutely. So everybody that has ordered a car through us that is in the first shipment should have got an email from us today advising of the new price, and we're honouring the 2995 for everybody. And the load shedding module is something that you can either talk with our team about on the phone when they call you over the next week just to go through your delivery process, or you can talk about with Ben's team when they come out and see you at home to install your charger. But obviously we'll honour that price to anybody that's pre-ordered.
I think the interesting point we came up there that I hadn't really thought about too much is that it's all very well putting the stuff in for one car, but you really should be thinking about potentially when you get that second car. I mean, that's something people probably forget when they're setting this up.
Well, that's right, and in actual fact, you can end up with 2 or 3 cars because I'm yet to find the person that's converted to electric that would ever go back. So, perhaps teenagers getting a used Nissan Leaf, perhaps it's the used Nissan Leaf that you're upgrading to new BYD, but you decide to keep it because you've got some teenagers coming through. So remember that relative to replacing energy in a petrol vehicle, all EV charging is always going to be slow. So the key thing there is having the charge point so that you can let the system take care of it and then be fully charged in the morning. The other thing I just wanted to bring up, when it comes to and these people that are looking at getting charging stations put in, have a real good think about where the location is going to be, because sometimes it's not. Sometimes the ideal location is not where it is closest to the charge port of the car, because there's no standardisation with where these charge ports go. So you want to have a little bit of flexibility with being able to charge different cars. And often we say consider what is the working side of your garage and what is the non-working side of the garage. And it's often better to put the charging station on the non-working side just so there's no trip hazards and things like that. And then also, do you always use your garage, or do you sometimes park the car in the garage and other times not, in which case put it towards the garage door and then you can charge your car when it's parked outside. So just have a real good think about having that 5 metre lead. If you need to upgrade it to 7 metres, you can do that with a Sparky, but just have a real good think about where the ideal location is, because sometimes it's not in the obvious place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had a think about this one a little bit, and I think we've discussed it with you before. I want to install mine on the ceiling near my garage door opener, so it's between the 2 cars, so it can charge in either direction. Is that something people have requested before?
Yeah, well, we've actually come up, at TransNet, we've come up with a cable tray mounted bracket. So when it's an apartment complex and stuff like that, you can mount to the cable tray, and the same bracket can actually be utilised to mount to the ceiling. But obviously there's a bit more involved for the Sparky, and certainly Ben would have final say with that.
We're really hard working over here.
That's right. So one of the things we can offer in an upgrade is a curly cord lead, because obviously if it's in the ceiling, you kind of need to be able to have a way of tethering it back to the ceiling. So just basically replicating what we do with the cable tray set up in an apartment complex. And I guess it's also a pretty good time to point out now that if the apartment complex has been set up as EV ready, then you can expect a charging station to be installed at the same price as what a house would have. But it has to have that apartment complex, has to have the backbone of that electrical cables already installed, because we're seeing a lot of people going to EVs that do have apartments.
Yes, because you live in an apartment building, don't write off the fact you could potentially having a charging station at in your car park. Just watch the neighbours from stealing your power, I guess. Now, let's move on to some questions. And this one is actually my own, because I have questions about charging. But it does cover off what some other people have already asked now in the chat. I've had an EV now for 2 years. I've been incredibly lazy, and I've been charging my car off the supplied charger for those 2 years, which has been sufficient for the mileage we do. Is that okay? I mean, surely the company wouldn't provide me with something that's unsafe?
When it comes to the portable charging, or the ICCPDs, or whatever you want to call it, it's not about that device. It's about the fact that it's the wiring already in your home. How long's it been there? It's generally not rated to be able to supply so much power for so long. So that's when it comes down to. I mean, if you, I guess our WorkSafe, what we have in New Zealand, the WorkSafe guide, if you're going to use that as a more permanent solution, then you really should go and install a a dedicated final sub-circuit, much in the same way that a heat pump has its own circuit, an oven has its own circuit, any other high drain electrical device in your home is going to have its own circuit. So it comes down to what might have powered a television or a fridge at probably, I don't know, an amp or less.
Yeah.
You're now expecting it to give 8 amps for 10 hours. It's just overloading your circuit.
Okay. So yes and no. It seems more to be down to the actual whether your wiring's up to it than the actual the unit itself.
Well, remembering that the actual device, the way it's talking to the car, exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
So which is why it's telling the car it can only have 8 amps because otherwise you're going to overload your circuit. So even a fixed wired charging station, it's really important to have one that can be controlled even by the user or eventually externally if you opt in on that sort of plan with your power company. But just to say you need a 32 amp charging station or a 16 amp will do, what you need is a charging station that is variable between 6 amps and 32, which means you can control it, turn it down when you need to. We don't drive our cars using full throttle and then modulate the speed with the brakes. We use the power we need at the time we need it.
Now, onto the reader question, or the viewer questions, I guess. And this one is, we kind of referenced this earlier on, is how fast will my Atto 3 charge? I heard it could charge at 80 kilowatts, and I think they mean DC there, but then I think they get confused. But have now heard that on 22 kilowatt charges, it will only charge at 7.4 kilowatts. Now, I think this comes back to that DC-AC difference, and that the car only has a 7 kilowatt onboard charger?
That's correct, Richard. So again, it comes down to the two different types of charging. So if you're DC charging, we have an 80, the car can take up to 80 kilowatts. So if you got a 100 kilowatt charger, you will only take 80 kilowatt from it. So that'll be the maximum speed you can charge at. If you're charging at home, as Glenn talked about earlier, the charger is actually on board on the car. So you've got we call it a charger, but it's really a
Charging station,
a switch, which is plugged into the car. The car will only accept 7 amps, so that's all the onboard charger 7 kilowatt. That's all the onboard charger will charge at. So regardless of how much capacity you've got at the wall, if you wired this up at 62 amp, it's not going to work. The maximum you're ever going to draw is 7 kilowatts, so that is the fastest you can charge with AC, and the fastest you can charge with DC is 80 kilowatt.
And to go back to our quick fire thing at the start, Ben, 7 kilowatts to the car, that's 16 amps at 230.
7 kilowatts at 230 volts is 32 amps.
32 amps, right? Okay.
We need to remember the relative. When a car person that's in the car, 80 kilowatts. Can you buy a car that doesn't produce 80 kilowatts anymore? Right. 80 kilowatts in the electrical game.
Yeah.
That's like a showstopper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's right. 80 kilowatt will kill you, I imagine.
No, it's just the amount, just getting it, the size of the cables, the cost. It's just ultimately the requirement to replace our energy quickly in a petrol car because you're waiting on it is replaced with the convenience of being able to charge at home. And really, if your car is fully charged again for your next day at 2 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, or 6 o'clock in the morning, does it really matter?
That's right. Now, this one's kind of a two-part question, I suspect, as well. There'll be a couple of answers to this one. And that is, can I schedule my charging, and why is this necessary? So the car can schedule charging, is that correct?
Yes, so you've got two options really. You can schedule the charging on the car or on the wallbox, and a number of other third-party charging solutions. You can go either way. Now, while it's important, is probably twofold. Number one, we've talked about earlier about the load shedding, is that if you don't have that in there, and you're home at 6:30 at night and you've got your oven going, your dryer going, your heat pump going, you're actually not going to have 32 amp to be able to charge your car. So you're going to have to schedule your charging to start a little bit later in the day or turn the speed of the charger down. So again, both of those options assist. And the other reason you might want to schedule your charging is around cost, and that if you're on a time of use power plan and you're getting cheaper electricity during the evening, and a number of power providers have EV specific pricing plans now, it's going to give you a lower cost of charge. There's no point buying the electricity when it's expensive if you don't need it till 6 o'clock in the morning. You might as well wait till the electricity is cheaper and lower your cost of charging in the car.
And it's real expensive to get the sparkies out to fix a blown fuse as well.
Is there any preference between scheduling the charging on the charger or the car? I mean, which do you ever thought of which is better?
when you get to that plug, connector that goes in, when you have the ability to do the schedule from the wall box or equivalent, it's best just to let that take care of everything, because that's when you're eventually going to add those other controls. So even something as simple as, did you remember to plug in? Charging stations are online, so you can be outside of your Bluetooth range, but you've got a Wi-Fi connection. You can check it's plugged in. So this is through an app? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, Wallbox and others, like most decent charging stations will have an app to be able to do that integration. Remember, if you don't have an app to do the integration, you're sort of like stuck with the fixed rate of charging. That's it. If it's installed as 32 amps, that's what you're going to get. Whereas when you have the app, you can control it down. So as you adopt to EV and you learn that, hey, it really doesn't matter as long as it's charged in the morning, if you take the load off your house, you're a lot less likely to ever have a situation where you've blown that main pole fuse.
Just in case anyone hadn't noticed, sitting on the table in front, not sure when I hold it up, is that's the type of wall box that you get installed with the package, is that correct?
This is the wall box, and with the flow lead.
And what's this other unit we've got next to it? This is another option that you can get as well, and something you might suggest to people.
You want me to do that?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so this is actually in relation to the dedicated circuit we talked about. Even if you're using the Type 2 chargers, we do recommend the dedicated circuit. It's got a 32 amp circuit in preparation for many future chargers, but it comes with a 15 amp dedicated power point for that safety, as we don't know the condition of our existing wiring in our existing homes. So that's that there.
What's the cost like on getting one of those installed?
I think we're sitting at $9.95 is where we got to yesterday, and that's basically everything that we would install for a wall box, but without the wall box. So if you decided later on you wanted the wall box or another third-party charging solution, effectively we don't do those 3 screws, and we bolt the wall box on. I'll make it sound simple. Is it that simple, Ben?
Yeah, it really is. Once you're a qualified electrician, yes.
and plug it in, and then you can have the wall box. So it gives you that 2-stage option if you just wanted to limit the cost at the moment, but you want to have that dedicated circuit, so you make sure everything is safe. And am I correct, and these two lads will correct me if I'm wrong, am I correct in thinking that is WorkSafe's requirement to have a dedicated circuit for charging?
Certainly recommended.
Recommendation, yeah.
So the issue is, you move into a home, nobody buys a home and then gets a Sparky in to pull the socket outlets to check the torque settings of in behind there. Part of the things people like builders, not Sparkies, is because the Sparky thing you can't see. But sometimes, like when you remove that socket outlet and it's been there for 20 years, it'd be a little bit like me buying an old car off you and then expecting to be able to use full RPM and full power and have no detrimental effect that the age has taken. So, it really is. New wiring means it's all good, it's all up to standard. You can use your portable charger if it's a bit of a, you're unsure, and then of course you're pre-wired to be able to put the wall box in.
Okay. Right, and I guess I would call that little panel over there the insurance policy. That should be its marketing name.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Actually.
Yeah, so I did want to point, even though it's rated at 15 amps, so that you can pull 8 amps continuously, right? It doesn't mean that your portable charger will enable you to charge it.
Don't go and jump on AliExpress and order a 15 amp charger to go with it.
Yeah.
And that leads into the next question, and it's more of a statement, I guess. Can you please explain to viewers why it's illegal to import their own unapproved Ebscs, and also that it's a bad idea regarding safety and insurance?
I'll just touch on that SDoc that we touched on before. So it's that supplier declaration of conformity, confirming that it's gone through the rigorous testing that New Zealand's required. So it's the SDoc. So if you've imported your own charger and it has an SDoc, a New Zealand SDoc, then we're more than happy to install it.
And another question for you, Ben, I would suggest, what kind of cable feeds my switchboard to the charger? I'm not sure if someone's trying to work out what they need to go down to the supplier and buy to do it themselves, but if we could have some nerdy spec on that would be great.
I guess how long's a piece of string? It's dependent on how far away you're planning on mounting your charger from your switchboard, because there's voltage drop comes into play. The further away it is, the larger the size of the cable required. So but a bit broad, so can't really answer that one.
But if you remember when Ben referred to the voltage as being a little bit like pressure, if you have a really, really, really long garden hose, you're going to lose some pressure. It's not going to be quite as grunty at the end. So in that case, if you're wiring it a long way away, you need to go up in size of the cable in order to not have that volt drop.
Yeah. Yeah, I know from, look, we've got, for people who you can't really see it, we've got a huge massive wires here running this studio tonight. And I know with USB cables, I can't get more than about 3 or 4 meters with USB cables before they simply run out of ability to carry stuff. It's people forget that just because it's got a plug in each end, it doesn't mean it's actually going to carry what you want it to carry. Now, this one's a bit of a tricky question. I'm not sure if we're actually going to have the answer to this. But will the Atto charge on my Tesla Gen 3 wall connector? It's a wired in 3-phase, giving me 11 kilowatts. It does charge and tested a Leaf with an adapter to Type 1 and a Volkswagen ID3, but not a Kia EV6, which may be a handshake order issue. Do you know if it was tested this yet? Or?
We haven't tried plugging a BYD into a Tesla charger. We obviously have experience with other brands. I mean, Tesla build their own proprietary charger. I know particularly the version 1, version 2, my understanding is that they can't charge third-party cars. I've seen plenty of comments online about the version 3 being able to charge third-party cars, but then I've also heard comments about them not charging them. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have a huge amount of knowledge or experience on the Tesla equipment, so it's probably not our area to comment. But one thing I will probably mention there is they're talking about it being 11 kilowatt.
Still not going to charge you any faster than 7.
Yeah,
It's worse.
Is it?
A lot worse, yeah.
11 kilowatt is 3-phase low current,
Right.
16 amps. So you plug in a car that has a single-phase onboard charger, it can only take from one of the phases. So in actual fact, your car's going to take, BYD, any single-phase car is going to take twice as long to charge on a charging station that's 11 kilowatt as it will on 7.5, and that's completely against logic. And if you go buy a microwave, you'd expect the 1500 watt one to heat up your pies faster than the 750, but when it comes to charging, it's not quite that simple, because remember, the charging station is a controlled, fancy switch. So if you install a 3-phase socket outlet in your kitchen, don't expect it to cook your toast faster.
Now, for those, and of course all of you who have read the latest Evs and beyond, you'll know that I drove an electric ute from Auckland to Wellington recently and had some charging issues. You've suddenly just made me realise why I was probably getting slow charging rates. So simple, so simple. Yeah. So just because you can charge at a 3-phase charger doesn't mean you should. And this car sounds like it's going to be far better off on a single-phase charger.
Yeah, and actually, yeah. So like the Ford or these big American pickup trucks that are coming out, they don't have 3-phase onboard chargers because the American standard is Type 1 type of connector, so it's only a single-phase onboard charger. So unlike anything else where 3-phase gives you more power, we need to remember that the reason you have 3-phase is because European houses, they have a 3-phase low current electrical supply to their home, unlike New Zealand, unlike Australia, unlike America, which are single-phase higher current. So we're much better set up to be single-phase. And it seems crazy, but if you add a second car to a home, even if your house had a 3-phase supply, you're still much better off installing the charging station as single-phase, so you can make full use of the available power in each individual phase instead of loading up one of them, and once it's reached its max, you can't charge anything.
How's the car likely to react to a 22 kilowatt charger, which is reasonably common these days at some of the bigger, larger banks of charge that are going in, things like the malls and so forth? Are they likely to charge reasonably well on those?
Well, they'll charge exactly how they'll charge on a 7.4 kilowatt. One of the things that makes it confusing, and I accept it's really confusing when we talk kilowatts, kilowatt hours and all that sort of stuff, we've ended up the naming convention and called it kilowatts. So we talk of a 22 kilowatt charging station, 7.4 for example. But if you look at America, you never hear of a 11 kilowatt or 7.4. It's always rated in amps. Because in general, in the electrical industry, anything that is designed to supply power is rated in amps. And anything that uses power is rated in watts or kilowatts. You don't install a 5 amp lamp at home, you install a 10 watt lamp. Equally, if the fuse blows, you don't go get a 15 watt fuse, you get a 15 amp fuse. So it gets a little confusing when we're giving this kilowatt rating to a device that is switching power and turning it on.
The Wallbox Commander 2s, I think, that are at Sylvia Park,
oh, yes.
Are they 11s or 22s or?
Of course not. They're 7.4.
7.4
because that's what's going to work best with the majority of cars.
There you go.
And remember,
Genius.
the restriction is always going to be the electricity supply. So you've got to install the charging infrastructure to get the most from the electricity supply. and in most cases that's certainly single phase.
So I think I know a bit about this kind of stuff, and I'm a little shocked, and I've actually learned something quite big there, that faster is not necessarily better on AC charging. That is interesting.
For sure, the term fast is relative. It's comparing to other forms of charging.
Yeah.
What we all do is think we're comparing it to filling a car with petrol, and compared to replacing energy in a petrol car, the 3 speeds of EV charging are slower, and slowest.
So if someone's lucky enough to live in a house in New Zealand with 3-phase, or they're a welder, so they've got 3-phase for the garage or whatever, and they're going to have a BYD Atto 3, you still recommend they get a single-phase charger?
Absolutely, yeah. Because, well, the car itself is only single phase.
Unless they future-proof by going all the way to a 22 kilowatt. No?
It's not going to charge the car any faster. In
But,
actual fact,
but it'll charge the same as the 7.4 kilowatt charger?
The 22 kilowatt will.
Yeah, so skip the 11. If you want to really future-proof and you've got 3-phase,
No.
jump straight to the 22?
no, because when you add a second car, if you have 2 cars
Yep.
in a home with 3-phase that have got 22 kilowatt charging stations supplying them, which is 3-phase 32 amps, then you're ultimately going to have less range adding capacity with those 2 cars plugged in than just having both of them set as single phase. So if you do have a bigger house with 3-phase, you're much better off with a spark. You'd say pick some high drain devices if they've got 3-phase. Normally they have a spa pool.
Yeah.
Some of them have saunas. Jaguar
Yeah.
I-Pace owners seem to have a sauna. That's just what we noted. You have these other high drain electrical devices. Put them on one of the phases and enable a second phase to be one EV charger and the third phase to be the other. You're going to actually end up combined range adding capacity will be more in that scenario when it's single phase.
This is why you need to talk to the experts. I did not know that. I've been playing with these for years. I did not know that, and yeah, you can save some money, I guess. That's clever. Right, let's keep going. I think we might skip that one. Let's go with this is not strictly a charging question, but can we ask about the vehicle to load feature during the session and if the adapter will be included with the car or as an option?
Absolutely, we can ask about that and we can answer it. Yes, it will be. However, it probably won't be available for the initial deliveries. So we will send it out to customers when it is available. We just need to get one that is compliant for New Zealand, and obviously, as Ben was explaining earlier, you need your compliance in New Zealand. So as soon as we have that, all owners will get it. It will be sent out to them post delivery. Hey, if we have it before, fantastic, but we have some deliveries pretty imminent, so it will be there.
And just to confirm, that is free, that's included in the price?
Yes, that is included in the price.
And to answer someone else's question, what's the output of that? I think it's 2,000 watts or something?
15 amps.
15 amps.
Yes, it's a lot, like 3,500 watts effectively.
Now, could I charge another EV off that?
Absolutely, it's just a power source. When we talk vehicle to load, and I guess there's some people here
People asking about it.
So, technical terms, I guess, or things that are used. You have vehicle to home, you have vehicle to V2X, for example. When we're talking vehicle to load, think of the vehicle as a standalone generator. It's not a Tesla Powerwall. It can't be integrated into your home. It's more to provide you power to be able to, run some devices, camping, for example. If you live on a lifestyle property and you want to run a electric bloody weed eater or something, you can run it down the road and plug it in. But just think of it as a generator, whisper quiet generator that just happens to be petrol battery powered. Yeah.
I think it'd be handy for builders who want to charge their batteries and all stuff on site. Convert a few to sell them to tradies and convert a few to vans, mate. That's the way to go.
Well, the other thing we have seen that Glenn touched on there was camping. With some of our other EVs we've sold over the years, we have seen some of our customers take them camping. They go charge them up at a DC fast charge station at some point during the day, and then at night they've got a small, relatively low draw refrigerator. They've got sometimes a little TV or some lighting in their tent. It's absolutely fantastic for being able to be off the grid, camping with having a little bit of electricity to run.
And if you have a power cut at home, it'll certainly run the Wi-Fi extended to keep the kids happy.
Hey, look, I'm looking in my house to run the water pump when the power goes down so we can have a cup of tea.
Yeah, as long as it plugs in and you're using it like you would a spare generator, then absolutely you can, yeah.
Fantastic. Now, let's get to the questions on the stream. Again, now's probably the time if you want to ask them, please do, because once we run through this, we will be winding up. I'm not sure if we're going to see Warren, though. Probably traffic's pretty bad tonight.
Yeah, I keep looking at the door. I haven't seen him turn up yet, so he may be watching in the car outside.
You just keep him watching the minute he might turn up. We'll see. We'll put the door on camera for a minute. So let's literally start from the top. I know this isn't in your list to cover tonight, but when is your Dunedin branch opening? That's not really a charging question, but anyway, I'll ask you, because you're related to the Dunedin branch?
So BYD are working on the Dunedin branch, and I'd expect an announcement of that in the coming days.
Yep.
But that's probably a Warren question.
Yes. Let's stick to the charging questions. I have this is from Roger Palmer. Hello, Roger. I have a 16 amp charger. Will I be able to use that on my BYD? I'm assuming they're meaning a 16 amp wall boxy type job, so 3.2 kilowatts.
Yeah, 16 amps.
Yeah.
3.7, I think. Yeah, something like that.
Yep. Safe to use?
That could take a lot longer to answer. Yeah. It all comes down to the condition of the wiring that's supplying that.
But I think they mean that's installed already, because I guess maybe that's what they were assessed they could have there because of their wiring and supply. But I'm guessing that's it'll just charge at 3.2 kilowatts.
Absolutely. Like with all these different terms, it can be hard to work out what's important and what's not. Now, all electric vehicles have your WLTP range.
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah. So that's a controlled set of circumstances with which I guess every vehicle is subjected to the same environment, so you get a range.
Absolutely.
Right? Electric vehicles very, very efficient. So the flip side of being very, very efficient is us as drivers, we get to play a bigger part in how far it'll actually go. So sometimes when you ask a car salesman how far is the range, it can sound a little bit questionable sometimes the answer, but the truth is how fast are you going to use the energy? Right, so you can see the BYD that's got some roof rails. You put some roof racks on it. You're going to impact the range of the vehicle. How many people? Whether you're travelling from Auckland to Taupo up hills, it's going to make a big difference than when you're going from Taupo back to Auckland. So a great rule of thumb, because we've been talking amps for a while, across all electric vehicles here in New Zealand, if you just want to be able to, put a number to it, those amps equate to kilometres per hour of range adding capacity. So if you're charging at 8 amps. Across pretty much every electric vehicle, if you just want to have a rule of thumb, call it, you're going to add 8 kilometres of range per hour. Charging at 32 amps, you'll add 32 kilometres of range per hour. So it makes it easier to work out when you've got the ability to turn down your charging station to better integrate it with the home, to kind of work out, well, hey, I do 80 k's a day, I've got 10 hours, well, 8 amps will be fine. So at no point do we say you need to have a 32 amp charging station. It's very useful to be able to have the ability to charge at the rate that suits how you use the vehicle.
Could we just come back to Roger's question really quickly, because I've actually seen a couple of these questions online.
Yep.
And I think that there could be two things he's asking here. One is obviously a wall-mounted charger at 16 amp.
Yep.
The other thing I've seen some customers asking about is where they've got a plug for a spa pool or something somewhere, they have something already set up at 15 or 16 amp, and they're looking at buying a portable charger from overseas that's charging at 15 amp or 16 amp. What's your sort of view on...
You can get those locally, because I have one source that is, I think that does 12 or 13 amps and is designed for caravan parks. They're okay.
So I'm just going to go on what I've read in the WorkSafe document, because it can, you're not meant to, unless you've got temperature measurement set up in the plug to check for over temperature, you're meant to be something like 3 amps less than that. So if you've got a 16 amp caravan plug, 12 amps is what the portable charger can give. And then it comes down to, is that you're still buying a whole new device. Obviously, we've got the compliance, which you've covered off quite well. That money is often better spent towards a fixed wired charging station. The point you said about absolutely, if it's fixed wired and it's 16 amps, in actual fact, that's better than having 32 that's on or off, because 16 is still going to charge most cars for how we use them, and it's not going to put your house in such a bad position of potentially blowing the fuse.
I feel like those portable 15, 16 amp units were more popular before we had a decent charging network. I know a lot of lease would hop around the country by going to campgrounds. But that's not really something that has to necessarily be done these days, except in very rare. I think the only time I've used that unit was trying to get from Wanaka to Franz Joseph. It was kind of an extreme situation.
For sure.
And is there situations potentially where someone would have a wall box fitted, but you guys might advise them that they can't have 7.4 kilowatts, they might be better off running that at a lower amperage?
Well, ultimately, if you know, in that situation, if you look at the cost of upgrading switchboards, and the only reason, am I right, the only reason you'd say that is because perhaps it doesn't have 63 amps, like I know some houses are
32,
less.
yeah, some houses you do find, very rare, but yeah, some houses have a 32 amp supply from the street. You would have to be cautious there, but once again, you could move down to the 3.7 kilowatt. Obviously, the wall box can do that, and many others can. You can just wire that up as 16 amp single phase for those particular situations.
But if you are touch and go, right, and it's a bit neither here nor there, of course, if you put that sensor back at the board and you say, okay, well, this whole house is good for 32, take a few off that to make it, you know, just underrated a little bit, but tell the wall box 30 amps is all it's allowed for this whole house, and if 30 amps is available, your car can charge at 30 amps, but if it's not, it just tapers the charge speed down to integrate with your home. So it's instances like that where being able to have that sensor becomes a real plus.
Now, next question is Trisha Hudson. If your switchboard is at the other end of the house and your meter is on the outside of the garage wall, can you connect your charger to the meter instead?
Short answer, no. It has to come from the distribution supply point, which is your distribution board.
Okay. Let's keep going.
I'm quite, you know how you said you learned a few things?
Yep.
I'm trying to learn a few things here as well. What about a sub board from that's closer dedicated? So a smaller sub board with an RCBO or something?
A sub board's still a distribution board, so definitely you can run it from any distribution board in the house if you do have multiple boards, but your meter panel on the outside is not a distribution board.
Okay.
It's purely a meter panel.
So technically you could install a much smaller distribution board to then feed the EV
so
charger.
if you've got a situation where you know your board's on the other end of the house, you want to install a small sub board in your garage to run your charger and maybe some potential future projects, sub board is definitely the way to go there.
And that's additional cost. Is that a big job to do, or is that?
It can be. It's all dependent on the house again. So it's how far away is the sub board going to be mounted from your main switchboard and stuff like that. So a lot of factors there. So it can be expensive. Yes.
Sorry to keep on learning something here too. That sub board that you put in your garage, if as Trish is asking, if you're you had your meter right next door to that, could you actually run the feed from your meter, or do you have to take the feed all the way back to the original distribution board?
The feed would have to come from the distribution board.
So you're still going to have to run the cable regardless.
The same distance
so you may as well run a smaller cable to not run a whole board and just go straight into the charger.
Yeah, it makes more sense to do that, but
option.
unless you had some future projects that you wanted to do, then you may want more capacity. So, yeah.
Now, Soft Roading New Zealand says V2G and V2H. Now, I don't believe the Atto 2 is capable of, Atto 3, because I'm looking at a number that says Atto 2 confusingly, is capable of either?
No, I don't believe so either. So
is it a CCS limitation?
Yeah, correct. So there's no, at the moment, currently, unless I'm sure there's plenty of testing going on in laboratories, but at the moment, CCS, which is your DC type of connector, that doesn't allow for V2A. So a key difference there, we were talking about V2L before. So when your V2L adapter that's going to go into the BYD actually plugs into the AC charge port. So the DC that's stored in the battery is being converted back to AC via the car's onboard charger, for not having another word. But when you're talking V2, V2H, V2X and CCS and that sort of stuff, it's when the actual charging station is plugged into the DC and the charging station on the wall is converting it back to AC for that. So CHAdeMO only at this stage.
It's only CHAdeMO for commercial use of it.
But certainly lots of trials going on using that.
Okay. So Maneet Singh says, so if this is a Type 2 charger, does that mean if later on down the line we have the $3,000 wall box charger installed, are most newer models and other brands using the same type of charger? Simple answer, yes. Everything's Type 2, and they're not likely to change that in the near future, are they?
I would say never. Yeah. the same likelihood that our domestic socket outlets are going to change, but they certainly haven't changed in my 40-something plus years, so not likely.
Another question from Tricia. Atto 3, and I'm guessing this is a question that comes from being an MG ZSEV owner. Would I need to equalize the battery regularly? So for those who don't know, with an MG ZSEV, they suggest that once in a while the car gets plugged into its trickle charger essentially and left for several hours to equalize the battery cells. Any idea of where that needs to happen with the Atto 3?
That's a really good question. And what I'll have to do, Tricia, is I actually saw the owner's manual for the first time today. I haven't read it cover to cover yet, but I've actually got it to have a bit of a read of, so I will find out the answer and come back to you on that one.
Yep, no worries at all. We'll post that answer on the comments for this video on as many channels as we can once we've got it, and the same goes for other answers we can't do. Is a Type 1 to Type... This is from Su. Can you use a Type 1 to Type 2 adapter converter for the Atto 3? Are they even legal?
Boy, it's hard questions. Definitely wouldn't recommend that at all. Okay. Yeah, we need to... you spoke before about bring your own cable, right? So within that cable, you have a thing called a control pilot, and that's how the charging station is telling the car how much current it can have. And you also have a thing called a proximity. Now, with the Type 1 standard, the proximity is basically saying something's plugged in. Because remember, the Type 1 bring your own cable is Type 1 one end, but Type 2 the other end to plug into a charging station. And so when you start using adapters, you've got to be very, very careful, because a fixed wire charging station won't actually use the proximity. The Type 1 doesn't know the current rating of the cable. So not recommended at all, but any charging station that is Type 1 tethered, you can get an electrician to change that to be Type 2. It is just a fixed wired lead, electrical lead, so they can change it across and convert it, and then you keep everything safe.
So the next one, we've kind of answered this. Is it always okay to use the charger that came with the Atto 3, or do we install one? The answer is complex. I think we've kind of covered that off already.
I think something I might just add there really quickly, Richard, is not only is it okay, for some people it will be sufficient. You know, and I think you really need to look at your driving habits, your usage, and how many miles you're doing, or how many kilometres you're doing per day, to determine whether it is or isn't the right solution for you. But certainly, while we're saying we recommend a fixed charging solution for you, for some people it will be an acceptable solution. So we're not sitting here saying it doesn't work.
But if you are using that, then the recommendation is strongly that you have a dedicated final sub-circuit to plug that portable charger into.
Now, someone's put us, and this is a bit of a challenging one, because I think it's, anyway, it's the old thing about why doesn't everyone buy a Tesla, but because they can't afford it or don't want it. And I won't name the brand, charger costs NZ $16.95 plus installation, and will seamlessly handle solar, battery and EV charging, and will only need a cheap CT clamp. I guess it's a case of, I could go and buy a $200 Android phone, but I want the better one that gives the better full services that I trust a bit better, I guess. I don't know.
Is the question referencing to the cost for installing the sensor?
I think maybe it's just challenging why is this an expensive option? And I guess there's expensive options, well, not expensive, there's higher cost options and lower cost options for everything, and there's a multitude of factors as to why. I mean, there's electric cars that are twice the price of the BYD but do basically the same job.
I think the other thing you're looking at there, Richard, is you're saying $16.95 plus installation. We're probably talking a $500 or $600 price difference. Yes, that is a reasonably large amount of money, but we've partnered with one brand. There are multiple brands in the market. Multiple brands make good quality products. We think the Wallbox, from what we've seen, and we've had Wallboxes in our dealerships for 4 or 5 years now, are probably the gold standard of chargers. So it's not to say there's anything wrong with the other chargers, but we're not, by the time you look at installation, you look at the RCD, you look at the cost of cable, you look at everything else, there's not massive price disparity, but this is all about just making it easy, but certainly other chargers are not an issue.
So when we're installing that, quality brands, Andrew Simms, TransNet, who I work for, everything that we recommend has to be 100% correct, right? So you go see a charging station that's been installed with a sensor, a data cable's okay, right? The actual signal can work over a data cable. But you're not actually allowed to run a data cable into a switchboard because the outside rating of the voltage rating of the data cable is not
That's
okay,
correct, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we have to use a communication cable between the wall box and the sensor that is rated for the voltage rating of the switchboard. So in this case, 300 volts, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I just think there's different levels of quality of everything, and some things will do the job, some things won't. I think, the wall box is one only. And just to clarify something that was discussed on social, your warranty is not impacted by not buying the wall box, is that
No,
correct?
absolutely not. We need to be really clear on that. You can use any charger with the car. There's plenty of third-party charger brands in New Zealand. A number of them are represented by reputable companies. The key you need to look at when you're putting a charger, using any charger via BYD, is it compliant for New Zealand? Is it wired to the electrical regulations? Those are the two key details, and there are certainly situations of chargers that don't have S-stocks, aren't wired to the electrical regulations, and there's certainly plenty of providers out there that will give you a charger that meets all of the compliance details for New Zealand, and that is absolutely fine to be using.
Now, Evan Pritchard, we answered that question earlier. The output of the V2L unit is 15 amps or basically 2 kilowatts. I think is
a
the
little bit more.
2000 watt.
About 3.3. So
3.3.
It's
wow.
sizable. Yeah,
Okay,
very much
great.
so.
Now, Lee Rozon says, my potential decision is based on the BYD app for my car. As I hope this app will accommodate timed charging and usage display. Now, do we know we've got the time charging usage in the car. Do you think it'll be in the app? Or do we not know yet? Too early to tell?
Probably too early to tell. I haven't seen much of the app. I mean, I know that's under development. Something we've been really keen, and it's sort of been led by Atto and BYD in New Zealand, is that we want to see, touch, feel, understand something before we talk to the public about it, because we want to make sure that we're giving all of you, factual, correct information, because we understand all the social chatter going on. We want to make sure we're giving you the right information. We're not really in a position to answer that. What I can, however, tell you is that the Wallbox app will do all of that.
Now, just rolling down further down, Peter Buchanan, we've kind of covered this already. We've touched on it with whether you can use the Tesla charger. It really is going to depend on your Tesla charger, and we still haven't tested. They still haven't tested the Atto 3 on it. I think people should be aware that earlier stuff was a lockdown by Tesla. It's not a failing in other cars. I think is the case. Yeah. That's something to cover off.
Also, when you're charging with a Tesla, you've got the app and you can reduce the current. So when you're charging anything else from that Tesla charging station and you don't have the ability to reduce the current, you're just one step closer to having that horrible Friday night when you've got no power.
Now, are the chargers weatherproof for outdoor charging? And I guess we should discuss this with the actual unit supplied with the Atto 3 and with a standard wall box and a cable.
So the wall box, absolutely, yep, rated for outside. The portable charger that comes with the car, it is actually rated for outside because I believe it's IP65, and IP65 is certainly outside.
100%.
The questionable part, and once again, you might help me with some learning.
Yeah.
When you're installing a socket outlet for outside, does it have to be waterproof, or can you just put any socket outlet? I thought it had to be waterproof.
Definitely has to be waterproof, yes. Yeah. So anything mounted into a seat, which won't be a charger or a socket, but is IP44, and then anything on the wall is IP54. Is the minimum.
So the thing is, with the portable charger, it comes with a plug that'll just go into the wall and not waterproof. So technically, you can't actually use it outside, even if it was rated to be used outside.
That's right, yeah.
And of course, one of the big no-nos is running a portable charger from an extension lead, because remember, we talked about the volt drop and the pressure drop and all that sort of stuff. All of those things only combine to be a less safe charging problem. And the thing with electricity, once again, the old mate here, if you start to overload something, you create more heat, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And then the more heat in itself means there's more resistance. So it's like a horrible of cycling thing that ends up with something getting severely overheated.
That's right. It's a never-ending cycle, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now, Jeremy Trotter says, I've read online in some places that using, he says supercharged, I'm going to say DC fast chargers, exclusively is bad for the life of the battery. Is this correct? As I live in an apartment and will only have access to superchargers in a separate parking building, holding out for the CLO. I can start with answering this, is that ideally, you don't want to be fast charging the car all the time, but the LFP batteries in the BYD are a little more resistant to it than others. And certainly when you're fast charging cars, perhaps avoid going to 100% on the DC charge all the time. If for anything else, it just becomes economic because it gets slower over 80%. But I would also remember to look around, and it's surprising that there is quite a bit of, certainly in New Zealand, sorry for our Australian viewers, of AC charging out there by and large free. And for example, if you were to go shopping for 2 to 3 hours on a Saturday, as certainly some people can do at Sylvia Park,
Absolutely.
you get 2/3 of a battery into the car.
Yeah, for sure. And if most of the time when you're living in an apartment complex, it's sort of like not travelling 150 k's to work and back a day. So what do you call it? Opportunity charging, where it is given as a free incentive to get people to go to those places.
Yeah. I was even with Australia. I was staying in Melbourne recently, and we couldn't charge at the place we were at easily. We were driving a Mercedes EQC, but we discovered the movie theatre and mall about 400 metres away had free charging in the basement. So the car just got dropped there for a couple of hours. I think it was a 3-hour charge limit, so it got dropped there for 3 hours every couple of days. You just got to get clever.
And in time, more apartment complexes are going to offer EV charging as options, really.
Yeah. Now, Lee asks, basic 7 kilowatt is all we need then? I guess the answer is yes. Not really much argument on that one. Trisha Hudson says, I've driven off in my MG with the charging port bungs left open and the charging flap open. How much damage did I do? I've only done it once.
I drove a Kia for 140,000 k's, and it was almost like the shame when you took off, and then it tells you that the charging flap's open. So, no damage. You know, don't make a habit of it, but it's not actually it's not actually going to affect anything. I think
being on the side and sticking out from the car as it does on the beauty. I think I'm not sure you're going to stay. You're not going to see on that one if I'm this side. Turn the camera a little bit, and you'll see over there.
Aerodynamics will close it for you. Just drive a little faster.
Yeah, well, I think it is. I think it is a little more sheltered there. I think that's quite an actual advantage being to the side, albeit plenty of argument about where you're better off having your charging port.
When it comes to the charging port, one of the things call it EV 101. Like the petrol engine's not running, so there's no noise, and you're not yet in the habit, so you jump in the car. And I'm not sure whether this is with the BYD, but certainly, your car then tells you can't go anywhere because the connector's plugged in, and then you go, I'll remove the connector, but you haven't powered the car back down again because you've already turned it on. And then the car itself is the thing that's locking the Type 2 connector to the car. And unless you unlock it, then it won't release that locking pin. And yet, because it's powered up, it won't allow you to lock it. So if in doubt and you can't get the connector out, I call it connector because technically it's not like a plug, but that's what we are talking about. Don't force it. Just start again, lock your car, start from the beginning and unlock your car. The locking pin will come out and the connector will come out and you can go off. But don't start forcing it because you'll end up breaking things and then not being able to charge.
Mark Jackerman says, and we sort of covered this already, so we'll fire through it quickly, please. I was thinking of getting a caravan plug installed and going down that route for low mileage usage. Would this be the way to go? I guess by the time it's all said and done, you might as well have just got the charger.
Yeah, I would say it's sort of like stuck in no man's land. Either just get by, with your 8 amp portable charger, or go to something that is controllable, not necessarily faster, because you want to be able to control it. But yeah, just spend your money where you're going to get value.
I'll summarise Gary Gloria's question here. Is there an untethered cable option for the wall box?
There is. It's tethered charging is highly recommended for home. When you have untethered in that Type 2 and you can have different current ratings of cables that going into it, it's just much more convenient to be able to have a tethered charging station at home.
James McKenzie says, nice to hear the vehicle to load adapter we sent out with to owners at a later date. But where are things at in regard to the granny charger that is to be supplied with the car? Is there a delay with them? Will you have granny chargers with the car ready to go when they're delivered?
Absolutely.
Probably on the spot there. No, it's our intention that we'll have the granny charger with the car. And we're not looking to deliver any cars without the granny charger. We've put out to customers today that we're anticipating deliveries on the 21st of August. I think it was 21st, so starting from the Monday of that week anyway.
There you go, you heard this here first.
And we're expecting there to be Grand Channel. Now that's for Auckland.
Okay.
There's obviously some logistical challenges. We're a very long, skinny country with significant vehicle sales at the moment, and a relatively small number of vehicle transporters. So there are some delays. I know of other brands getting cars around the country. I don't know where the other dealers are at, but I think they'll be on a similar time frame. But all of the dealers around the country are pretty clued up. They know where they're at. Just talk with your dealer.
Because I guess it's not just a case of the car arrives, give it a wash and chuck it out the door. There's stuff to be done, isn't there?
Absolutely. I mean, we want to make this the first batch of cars. We want to make sure that they're absolutely dead right. We've been really, really impressed with the cars, but we just want to make sure that we have everything lined up, ready to go. So, as I say, if you're in Auckland and you're in the first batch, you would have an email from us today confirming what that delivery process will be.
Yeah. Now, you might need to, the electrical brains that on the rest of the table might need to decipher this one. Solar plus three-phase house plus charger. Put all on one phase with high-load day use items?
Is high load what?
Day use items.
So with the BYD, of course, it's a single-phase car anyway. So whether you install the charging station as three-phase or not, it's only going to take from one of those phases. So
I think what they're talking about is what we were talking about before, is that if you've got three phases, put some of your high-use stuff on one in the car and the other. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yes, separate. I mean, in that regard, I guess a Sparky would treat it as another high drain, but certainly a massively massively high drain, like a what do you call it? What's the ceramic cooktops? You know that you don't like.
The induction hobs.
Yeah, 40 amps or whatever.
They
So
go up to 50 amps. Yeah.
wow. So yeah, definitely separate it off. Yeah.
Just flicking through a few more questions to see what we have that's still there. A lot of car questions, and unfortunately without Warren here, I'm not really in a position to answer them. Maneet Singh says, how long will the charging take on the vehicle at the Vector Charger station in Newmarket? My guess on that, it would be 0 to 80 in about 35 minutes.
Roughly, yeah. I mean, that charging station, I think I know the one
It's
we're
50
talking about.
kilowatts.
Oh, is it 50?
Yeah.
You can be 0 to 80 in about that, and if you're going 0 to 100, you're going to be like an hour and 10.
Never bother to charge a DC charger to 100. You'll wait
lasts
forever, and you're
20%.
being rude to other people by waiting that extra half an hour, I reckon.
If you remember that we said how the wall box equivalent is sending a signal to the car telling it how much current it can have. When you're doing a DC charge, the car is sending a signal back to the charging station, the actual DC charger, to tell it how much power it can give it.
Yep.
So the car will always dictate that speed of charge, and certainly once you get closer to full, it very much slows down. That's a pretty much EV.
Also, keep in mind in that one that the Newmarket Vector Charger has a 30-minute time limit, so you got to get off after 30 minutes anyway, or some angry leaf owner will come and yell at you. Where in the car do you plug in your V2L cable? That's from the actual charge port, isn't it? Into the Type 2 charge port?
Correct.
Yes. Yep. The owner's manual says you should charge to 100% once a week. I guess we'll see that. I haven't seen the manual either, so we'll take your word for it. I think we can skip that question.
I might just add to that. I just noticed one of the questions there about other chargers that aren't 3K plus installation. Just be really clear, we're 3K including installation.
Yes.
So, we're talking a couple of $100 difference from some of the other brands in the market.
Yeah, so Steve Kinnings, just be very aware that your information you posted is actually wrong. It is including installation. There we go. Keep going. Sorry, we're nearly there, guys. We're just finally just tidying up the final thing. Will future cars have three-phase charging? Is it coming far off, or will it only ever be a few cars? That's a bit of an interesting question for the future. I mean, I know there's definitely some higher-end cars with three-phase charging. I think Porsche in this last week announced that if you already have one, you can get yours upgraded to three-phase charging for your Taycan, but I'm not sure it's that much. It's worth the cost on lower-end cars.
Ultimately, charging is about having the energy you need at the time you need it at the lowest possible price. So people are not going to want to pay more for the energy rate just to have the car charged at 2 o'clock in the morning. And whilst when we use our petrol habits and try and bring them across to an electric vehicle, ultimately charging and control of charging, especially from the utility company, you're going to want to be able to have, like I said, the energy you need, the time you need at the lowest possible price. And ultimately it's the lower end control that's more important. So we're fixated on speed of charge, but three-phase charging, it's like having a throttle on a car that only starts to work at halfway down. Because at your 6 amps at three-phase is a starting point of around about 3.2 kilowatt, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're doing a single-phase charge and you control down to 6 amps, you're only at 1.2 kilowatts. So I know we're fixated on speed of charge, but we need to have the better control of charge.
As we started with, I've lasted for this long on 1.4 kilowatts or whatever it is, if I'm lucky. So yeah. Now, I just want to address a couple of challenges here from people in the comments. I don't really want to do this, but look, we are very aware there are a multitude of brands of electric vehicle chargers out there, and they all come at different prices and different installation rates and so on and so forth. And I'm not going to go through and name the ones that are being thrown in here because there's so many, and if I mention that, why aren't I mentioning all the others? Look, you can make your choice. The great thing about this is that, Andrew Simms and BYD are working with Wallbox on this. They aren't forcing you, but they are offering, I think, what's a pretty decent package for a high quality charger. So look, you've got choice out there. I'm not going to go through and name and endorse stuff that's being thrown up in the charging thing. I've just had one last, and we'll make this the last question in regards to charging. From Tricia. Ben, can you just tell us again about what the S-Doc is?
An S-Doc is a supplier declaration of conformity. It's a process that I believe every hardwired appliance in the country has to go through to meet certain standards to be able to be sold and installed in New Zealand. So whether we're installing an air conditioning unit, a charger, they all have to come with an S-Doc. Legally, we're not allowed or not even prepared to install any fixed wide appliance that doesn't have an S-Doc. What testing they go through, I mean, they're rating it to our electrical supply and standards, our temperature, our weather, all these certain things, and that's in a nutshell what an S-Doc is.
Could it be said, like, as a supplier, it's almost like a warrant of fitness is to a car?
Yeah, I'd say that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Now, just quickly, I know we haven't got Warren here and we are going to shut up now, but we'll just answer a couple of tiny little car questions if we can.
We'll try.
So just to confirm, deliveries in Auckland will start on August 21?
We've put the email out today saying we're anticipating deliveries on August 21st. Hopefully, our customers are reasonably happy with the communication level. If that changes, we'll update you. We'll be pretty proactive in that communication and you'll hear from the team in the coming days. But, that is... I would say I'm 95% confident at this point.
We've had a pile of questions asking how much are floor mats?
$195.
That's pretty good compared to what I think some brands charge for their that's the genuine floor mats, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
We'll answer this question because it is a good question. If you buy the package Wallbox when you purchase your car, is there an option to delay installation if you're currently in rental accommodation but looking to buy a property in the near future?
Absolutely no problem at all.
Okay. And what cable do you recommend I can purchase when staying in motels with untethered chargers? Well, I think everyone kind of should have a BYO cable for when they're going to the various locations. They are handy to have. Anything people should look around when they're buying those?
Can you buy them through you?
You will be able to. We don't have them yet, but we will shortly. So that's something that we can probably come back to you on the cable. But there are plenty of size of them out there, but we will make sure that we do have a supply of them available to make life easy for people.
From my personal experience, no shorter than 5 metres.
Definitely.
If not a little longer for those times when someone's gone and parked in a thing and you've got to go and park on the grass strip next to it and run the charger over the lawn to get there. Cool. Look, I think that we've pretty much covered everything. I'll answer this one. We can do one last. Is there any recommendation about preconditioning the battery in cold conditions? I don't think in New Zealand it gets really to get cold enough that's that big of an issue.
No, it's not something I've come across actually. I mean, again, it's a question probably for the technical team with BYD, but again, I'd imagine it's covered in the owners meeting. I do apologise, I did get it today, and I was intending to read it all before tonight, but I've got a little bit sidetracked with a couple of other things today, so I'll make sure I get that cover to cover in the next 24 hours.
From my experience, preconditioning in New Zealand for DC charging, It might help a little bit sometimes, but a lot of the time I think I've been able to precondition just by driving a little bit harder in the last 4 minutes before arriving at the charger. It's always handy, the Bombay charging out hypercharger at the top of a hill, I think. That's about all you need in New Zealand weather conditions. Maybe if you're down in Invercargill, but even then, I don't know. Any other thoughts on that? No? Any other closing statements from anyone? No? Great. Look, and from you, you want to say the last things?
I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. I mean, the whole intent of tonight was to give you some further information about charging. I mean, I hope we certainly weren't trying to make it an advertorial about Wallbox or Andrew Simms, but we've seen a lot of questions out there about charging. I hope that answered the majority of them, and just want to probably be really clear that you can use a multitude of third-party chargers, but the key to make sure is that you're getting it installed by a registered electrician, that the charger has an S-stock, that it's compliant for use in New Zealand. But again, we're sort of looking at what we think is a really good long-term future-proofed solution for your home.
And look, thank you everyone for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all those things on here. This has been a huge success. We were expecting to be out of here in 40 minutes and off to dinner, and we've been here for an hour 20, and everything's probably closed across the road. But it just seems there's so much demand for information about this. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will catch you hopefully again soon with more great live streams like this and more great information.